our first session today, we're ready to start off the day looking where else but high up into space. We will be joined by Dan Tani, retired NASA astronaut, who will be reflecting on his time as a space explorer.
Well, thank you very much for having me and choosing me to kick off this 5-day festival. It's fantastic. Thank you very much. I've got some slides to show you. I'll tell you a little bit about my career and some of my thoughts and views of being an astronaut and in space. Of course, in this era of COVID right now, it's we're taking every precaution we can take. But now that I realize I'm 10,000 miles from pretty much everybody else, I can take off my mask here and be more comfortable. Next, please. Well, my story starts really outside of Chicago, Illinois, which is where I grew up. And when I meet people and they find out I'm an astronaut, one of the first questions that they inevitably ask is, did you always want to be an astronaut? When you were 6 years old, did you know that you were going to go into space someday? And really, in my case, that's not true. I would say, a pretty typical kid in the 60s. Everybody wanted to be an astronaut, or everybody wanted to play astronaut. And so everybody was space crazy, but nobody thought it was possible to become an astronaut. In my case, I really enjoyed baseball. I'm a big baseball fan. And one of the things, one of the surprises in my life is that I'm not playing professional baseball right now, probably because I'm not any good at playing, but I do enjoy baseball quite a bit. Probably my biggest hobby when I was about 12 years old was flying model rockets. And these are rockets that we build ourselves. They're made of paper and wood, and you can put a little engine in them and then hook it up to a battery and press the button, and it goes up hundreds of meters in the air, so high that you can't even see it anymore. And then a parachute comes out and you chase it down and you can do it all over again. And I love doing it. It was so exciting. And now that I have the vocabulary, I know now that what I really loved, what I started loving, was the engineering of it. I love the building. I love the electronics and the circuitry and making it go fast. I love the engineering of it. But then I started thinking about what it was like, for the rocket. And, it was so high up there, I could hardly see it. And I wonder if it could see me. It started making me think, what does it look like from up there? And I wonder if I could see my friend's house or my school. And I would say that started my love of exploration. And so through these model rockets, I really started my path down both an engineering and an exploration pathway. Now, I went to university. Next slide, please. I went to university at MIT in Boston, and I studied mechanical engineering. And I got my mechanical engineering degree because I can understand how things work and how to make things go. And let's see. And with my mechanical engineering degree, I could build anything. I was really interested, frankly, in consumer products, and wanted to be a car designer or a designer of things that people use. I'm fascinated with how people interact with machines and devices, and that's really the direction that I thought I would go. Next, please. And again, please. But turns out the first job that I was offered, or the job that was most appealing to me, was a job in the aerospace industry, which was not something I was particularly seeking out. But it was exciting for me because the factory, the place I was going to go to, was a mile from the beach in Southern California. And I was very interested in the opportunity to live near the beach and live that lifestyle for a while. So I worked for a couple aerospace companies, and that was exciting, first as a mechanical engineer. And then I got to work in what's called mission operations, and that is to be like the mission control to launch a rocket or to launch a satellite. And one of the missions I worked on was with NASA, and I got to meet some astronauts. And working with those astronauts was exciting, of course. I got to meet astronauts, but as I worked with them, I just spent time with them, and I got to know their families, and I got to hear their stories. And what occurred to me is that being an astronaut is a job. And it doesn't sound like that's a big revelation, but I'd never really thought of being an astronaut as a job. And I would say that's the moment I thought, you know what? I have a pretty good resume. I should try out for this job. And I sent my application in, and I was surprised as anybody in 1996 when I was selected as a member of the class of 1996. Now, NASA selects astronauts in a class, and they train together, and it's really a big part of our identity as an astronaut, what class you belong to. We were the 16th class of astronauts, and we were the largest class ever selected, even now. There were 35 Americans, and then there were 9 international folks that joined our class to make a total of 44. And let's see, if you go here, you can see me in the back row with the big smile. Now, when you look at these 44 smiling faces, what you should think of is how many of us trained to be astronauts? And the answer is 0. Now, one of the ironies is that NASA, when they pick these classes, they don't go out and pick the best astronauts because nobody studies being an astronaut. You can't, there's no junior astronaut program, or there's no degree in college to be an astronaut. What NASA looks for is people that are excelling in their particular field, be it medicine or science, or engineering, and they're looking for great learners and great leaders and great team members. And then they'll teach us how to become astronauts. And so it's really a little ironic that NASA does a fantastic job in creating astronauts out of people they select to be something else, some sort of leader, some sort of learner of sorts. And I think that's something that other industries can think about when selecting talent. And maybe the focus shouldn't be on particular skills or particular qualifications, but really being able to identify potential and then teaching them what they need to know to fit into that particular industry or that particular company. Because NASA has a great success record with creating fantastic astronauts. So I flew on the space station for 4 months. And I just want to show you some crew pictures. This is the crew, the space shuttle crew that brought me up to the space station and dropped me off. So there's 10 of us there, 3 people living on the space station and 7 of us. And there's 2 things that I want to really point out with this picture. First is the woman right in the middle. Her name is Pam Melroy. She's the 2nd woman to ever command a space shuttle mission. She was fantastic to work for. She knew how to build her team. We are close to this day. 20 years later, we exchange messages and stay in touch. She created a real family environment, and she was a fantastic leader. Right below her in this picture is a woman named Peggy Woodson. She was the first woman to ever command the space station. She was my boss on the space station. When I see this picture, what I'm reminded of is the great women leaders that I've had the privilege to work with and for in my life. From my mother to my daughters to these fantastic women at work, and the leadership example they have shown me and have helped guide me has been invaluable. And so I always like to point out the incredible women that I've been able to have influenced me in my life. The other thing that I want to point out in this particular picture is the person on the right there is Paolo Nespoli. He's an Italian astronaut. And then the guy next to Peggy at the bottom there is Yuri Malenchiko, and he's a Russian cosmonaut. And then I'm going to go to the next slide because the flight that brought me home had another crew of 7 astronauts. And in the back row there is Hans Schlegel. He's a German astronaut. And next to him is Leo Aerts, and he's a French astronaut. And then Yuri is also in this picture also. So if you can go back to that picture, of the 17 people that I flew with on that particular mission, 4 of them were not Americans. They were from other countries. And unbelievably to me, 3 of those countries were our sworn enemy just decades ago. As an American, these are people that we fought terrible wars with and mistrusted. And it's so wonderful to be in an international community now in the space program, where all of these nations that were enemies now rely on each other for our lives. We are a team that depends on each other, and the interaction between cultures and genders and races and nationalities is not only successful, but it's critical. And we are really focused on building the team and using the diversity of the team as a strength. We feel that's very important. Okay, so when we think of team, I want to make sure that we think of a bigger team than just maybe the people you work with, or in our case, the space station crew. And so I want to point out that we have an entire, dozens and dozens of people at Mission Control that support us, and we would not be able to do the job that we can do without Mission Control. And behind them, there's another set of teams, engineers that feed the mission controllers the data, plus everybody that keeps the space center running. And I would make sure that as we, the privileged people that fly in space, or maybe you watching the privileged people that get to make decisions for businesses, or are in charge of managing portfolios or whatever, remember that we're members of teams, but that team can be big, and that this big team is important. And we need to make sure that every member of that team gets acknowledged of the critical role that they're playing. All right, next, please. Okay, well, I lived on the International Space Station for 4 months. It's a spectacular laboratory orbiting, going around the Earth every 90 minutes. And it's a wonderful place to be, about 400 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. What I want to point out here is on the boundary of space and Earth in this picture is a very thin blue line, and that's the atmosphere. The atmosphere is about 50 kilometers of gases that protect our Earth. They protect our Earth from solar radiation, and they also maintain the temperature inside. They do a very effective job of reflecting and passing through radiation so that we have a habitable temperature on the surface of the Earth. And if we disturb that, back please, if we disturb that atmosphere, we could do damage to the climate that we have created, or that has been provided for us on the Earth. Everybody that goes to space looks at that atmosphere and says, my goodness, how thin it is, how fragile it looks, and we really need to take care of it, and we do. If that atmosphere is spoiled in any way, we can really mess up our climate, and I think we're seeing some of those effects. But we astronauts can look down at the Earth, we can take pictures, but when you're looking for longer changes, climate change, we're not the best things to do it. We are like watching our children grow. You don't really notice your children growing, so you don't really notice changes on the Earth as you look down. We need other devices to do that. Next slide, please. And so we use satellites. And satellites do a fantastic job of doing something repetitively and consistently. This particular satellite can measure the surface of the ocean, the height of the ocean, and we'll notice minute changes in the surface of the ocean. We're going to want to know that because we believe that the ice caps are melting and the surface of the oceans is going to rise. Some other satellites can measure the temperature of the ocean or the content of the atmosphere in terms of ozone or CO2. And so we can use these satellites to give us data to monitor the climate and see how it's changing or if it's changing. But I think the jury is back, and yes, we are changing the climate. But to what extent, and how badly should we be worried? I'll show you a few examples of some pictures that satellites take, and to show you what has been seen. So this is an ice sheet in Greenland, and it's a pretty boring ice sheet. But and what happens is every year some of the ice melts, and you'll see it melt in the summer, but then it refreezes in the winter, of course. If you go next, this was an extraordinarily early melt in 2016, and you can see the large amount of water that's forming on the sheet. And of course it'll freeze again in the winter, but the problem is this water absorbs heat from the sun more rapidly than the ice does, and so once it starts melting, it melts more rapidly, and so we are really affecting this ice sheet. And you can go back and press the button one or two more times just to see this difference again. This was jarring for the people that watched it on the ground. Okay, go ahead, next. This is Northern Europe. This is Denmark and Sweden, Netherlands to the left, and Germany below. This is in the summer of 2017. Because of an awful drought and an awful heat wave throughout Europe, if you go to the next slide, you can see an enormous amount of drying and browning of the vegetation in Northern Europe. Go and again, and you'll see the difference again back into 2017. Do it again, and then one more time, the brown ground. And this was also seen in Britain and most of Northern and Western Europe that summer. Okay, next, please. Okay, this is a reservoir in Chile, and this is the primary water source for Santiago, Chile, the El Yeso reservoir. It holds about 200 million cubic meters of water, and this is in 2016. If you go next, in 4 short years, because of the drought and because of the increased temperatures, the water level in this reservoir has halved. There's only about 100 million cubic meters of water. Again, go 2 more times and you can see just the dramatic change in what is the primary source of water for Santiago. And these are the effects that the shift in climate has made down in South America. And one last example. This is the Pine Island Glacier in Antarctica, and every once in a while, parts of the glacier will break off and float away. But in 2013, if you go next, a very large iceberg calved off. Next, please. Right. So it's hard to see a scale there, but that iceberg is about 700 square kilometers. Okay, and it calved off, which is this is the ice. This is the glacier melting basically, so that big chunks can come off. That iceberg is about the size of Singapore, almost exactly the size of Singapore. You can click the button 2 more times just to see it again, the difference of that glacier, the calving this huge iceberg. Next, please. Well, it's so fitting that I'm talking to Singapore and all over the world, but that the FinTech is taking place in Singapore tonight or this morning, because Singapore is becoming known as a center for space innovation, and in fact joining the world in small space industry, because now you can build satellites for tens of thousands of dollars instead of tens of millions of dollars. And Singapore is doing a great job of not only in the education market, but also in the business market, starting to get involved in the space industry. And it's not just, space industry isn't just building rockets and satellites. Of course, those are needed too. But as we send people to Mars or further, space industry is going to involve things like life support or clothing or design or food, policy, of course, laws. So there are many, many industries that are going to be needed in space exploration. And I believe that Singapore is well positioned to take advantage of that, create jobs and industries, and do very well. So it's quite fitting that I'm talking to Singapore at this time, because I think again, Singapore is well positioned to take advantage of the space industry in the future. And next slide, please. That's all I've got to share with you today. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you've got lots and lots of things to hear about this week, and I'm thrilled again to be part of it this morning. So back to the studio in Singapore.
Thank you so much for that, Dan. And it makes me wonder whether or not they would take somebody from the media industry, and that's my background anyway. Imagine me in space. Can't do that. I mean, Dan doesn't quite cover it, but I'm sure he would be able to tell you so much more about just how much preparation it takes for a single trip into space. In fact, I happen to know, reading up about Dan, that not only is he experienced in space, he's also very adept underwater, it seems. As part of space training, he actually spent a week or so beneath the Atlantic Ocean training for the extreme conditions in space. So we have been very, very lucky to have him speak to us today.